Welcome back to the Mid-Mass channel. I've been watching a lot of Adventure Time lately, and with that comes a video idea. And this video is all about a more traditional RPG experience for your Dungeons & Dragons game. Say you and your players are not much of the story-driven type, and you like a more gamey experience. You're more of a World of Warcraft-like person. Just the general, more traditional not RGB. The more traditional RPG experience, then you might want to listen to this video. I myself have actually been designing a new campaign for my players after this one I'm currently running ends. This new campaign will be filled with more RPG-like elements. So let me share a couple of them with you, and perhaps they will help you along your campaign, or perhaps just one shot. One of the first things I did was I kind of removed the overarching story. Nothing super crazy is going to happen in a couple weeks after the players have achieved a certain level. The adventure is up to them. Giving the reins over to your players and them just going off and choosing an adventure is a much more traditional way of doing things. The way I'm going to introduce it to my players is by using a bounty board. The players can go into a town and find a bounty board and find these bandits, or perhaps a mysterious disturbance within the forest. And there are other ways of doing this too. You don't have to do a bounty board for your players to find an adventure. If you've played Skyrim, you know that if you walk into a tavern and talk to the tavern keeper, they will often give you a side quest to do in the meantime in between your larger, more lengthy quests. Regardless of the way of presenting these quests to your players, it gives them the choice to take the quest, and they don't necessarily need to do it. And that brings up the fact that you shouldn't really make these quests super urgent unless you're trying to direct your players somewhere. Because when you make something urgent, it kind of tells the players, you need to go do this, you need to go do that, right now, do it. So instead, just make it like, oh yeah, I heard that, hey bro, I'm the tavern keeper, clean the counter. So I heard that, in the forest there was just some goblins. I kind of saw them running around. They had a cool looking staff. You wanna go get it? You bring it to me, I'll pay you. Pretty cool. Doing that is more of a passive way of saying, hey, there's a quest over here if you want to go do it. Instead of, hey there, I'm the tavern keeper. We're all going to die if you don't take care of the goblins. It'll be all your fault if you don't take care of the goblins. For some reason, no one else can take care of the goblins. You need to go take care of the goblins, bro. You need to go do that right now. So, dropping the sense of urgency just kind of opens up some more doors for you and the players to just go somewhere. Do something. The next way you can add a more classical RPG experience to your Dungeons & Dragons game is using the XP system for leveling up your players instead of the milestone system. I've already made a video about this, and you can check that out here. I think it's here, maybe here. But regardless, XP is a very common thing in like RPG video games, and if you're not really familiar with how this system works, just to boil it down real quick, you can just watch the video for more information, but to boil it down, you get experience from finishing, say, quests, destroying enemies, or perhaps anything the Dungeon Master thinks should reward you with XP. For example, in the Dungeons & Dragons scenario, Dungeon Masters like to reward their players with experience points when they have a good session of roleplay. And as I mentioned, this XP system is just more closer to the traditional kind of gamey RPG experience. Now, this next thing I'm about to tell you, might not be the most popular thing in the world, so if you don't like it, feel free just to skip this. But I recommend restricting the type of character you can make in that campaign. Just by a little bit. I'm not saying like, you can only play human and dwarf sometimes. Just make it so that your players don't start off as something super crazy and super cool right off the bat. Because in many RPG experiences, you don't start off super powerful. In fact, you start off like the Wretch from Elden Ring. You start off as a very basic character, something with only like a short sword and a shield, and you go out and you fight things. It's only when you are fighting things, defeating creatures, going through dungeons, completing quests, you start to get more gear and make your character something more personalized. And giving your players more ways to explore building their character along the way, rather than just up front, might be a more interesting experience. For example, say your player wants to play a race that you don't think really fits into the setting right away. Perhaps allow them to change into that cool, crazy centaur or something. Centaur, that's the first thing that came to mind. Allow them to change into whatever they want down the road as a reward. Give them additional buffs to go with it. Or perhaps they get to change the type of creature they are. Many races start off as humanoid. Perhaps they turn to an ooze, or perhaps an undead. This gives the feeling that they have been down a long road of adventure, and these adventures have changed them. Basically, going from basic to holding a sword made of a corpse of a god. Pretty standard RPG stuff. Put more of an emphasis on the skills of your players. And what I mean by this is perhaps that herbalism thing that they have going on, that set of herbalism tools, actually can come into use. Allow them to get better and stronger at these sort of things, to create better and stronger potions. In a lot of Dungeons and Dragons games I play, I often don't see people taking advantage of the fact that technically players can make potions, but a lot of people don't do it because it's either a obscure, complicated rule, and the results are not as good as just going to a potion shop and then buying the very strong potions. So giving your players a much more intuitive way of exploring these skills they have put upon their characters, whether it be blacksmithing, herbalism, alchemy, etc., letting them explore them and then make really powerful gear out of it, would be a little more akin to your standard RPG experience. Think World of Warcraft or RuneScape and these other games that allow you to craft and make different items. Or personally, of course, my favorite RPG ever, Minecraft. Of course, that is a slight joke, but you get the point. Just being able to craft and make your own items is fun. It's cool. And it is more akin to a gamey sense of game feel. Lastly, every RPG has its rarity of items, and so does Dungeons & Dragons. But oftentimes, you may have noticed that these items don't fit in with the more traditional RPG experience you'd expect from other games. For example, some common items in Dungeons & Dragons that are considered magical literally do nothing. Or at the very least, like our friend Time Orb here, only just tell the time. It is essentially a glorified clock. But having different weapons and pieces of armor with different tiers that perhaps you curated yourself, made them yourself through homebrew, can help with the classic RPG feel you're trying to go for. Perhaps add in different systems to introduce +1 and +2 weapons to your players that aren't just finding them as magical items. Let your players maybe craft these items eventually. And of course not right off the bat, because having a +1 item even at level 5 is quite a lot. So just consider the items you can give to your players. Maybe just make some of your own, because it is Dungeons and Dragons, it's a fantasy game. And if you're more interested in the loot side of things for your players, I have made a loot video here that you can also go to that might be of some assistance. Every RPG has its loot, so it's very important that you give it to your players. That is all for this video. I hope it was insightful, I hope it was helpful to you. I will bid you adieu, my friend. Adios. I didn't wave, I just kind of went like this. There we go, adios.